I've been thinking a lot about bonsai lately, and I'm always trying to make connections between things that might seem unrelated to city skylines, but I think do have some parallels. So this episode is going to be slightly different than some of the more recent ones. The first reason for that is I'm going to be spicing things up a little bit with a primer on bonsai design principles and techniques. The second way the episode is going to be different is in the goal I have for the episode. So in the previous episode, I noticed that there were a lot of incomplete or otherwise neglected parts of the build, which I don't really see as a negative per se, but more as a part of how I naturally build when I'm playing. However, I also want to spend some intentional time cleaning up loose ends and beautifying the city, so I'm going to be calling this episode and any future episode like it a pruning episode. This leads us into one of the techniques of bonsai that I feel like can be applied to city skylines, which is of course pruning. Before I get to that though, I want to briefly discuss the aesthetic and design principles of bonsai so we have a baseline from which to continue. So first of all, I'm far from an expert in bonsai, and if you're really interested, I would recommend you go check out Heron's Bonsai on YouTube. Peter has this really chill energy and decades of experience in bonsai, so he can speak to it a lot better than I can. It'll just be probably over a few more episodes that you'll have to watch to kind of absorb the information. But with all that said, I'll give my best shot at a primer. First of all is proportions. So a bonsai tree should share its proportions with the full-size counterpart. This is something that I'm always trying to think about in my cities, and I think has a very specific application in game, which is in building density. Real cities are not bound by a tile limit like we are in city skylines, so I find it kind of important to think about how to achieve a similar scale of density gradient as you might find in a real-life city. We're forced into this slightly smaller scale, so it is important to keep in mind your downtown might be half the size of a real one, but how can you make it feel as grand and large as the real thing? All of that has to do with maintaining a realistic proportion in order to achieve an effective miniaturization. Up next, I want to mention Jin, Shari, and Uro. Each of these are different kinds of deadwood features in bonsai. A Jin is a bare stripped part of branch. A Shari is a barkless part of the trunk, and an Uro is a hollow, irregularly shaped wound in the trunk. I like to think of this in terms of achieving a realistic development pattern and realistic features in my cities. Just in the way that a Jin is a feature made to look like a branch that broke off of a tree and give the bonsai a sense of history, I think a similar thing can be achieved in city skylines. Later in the episode, I'll talk about a specific example in the city of this, where I could redevelop a small highway into something like a park. You see this in real life with things like Rails to Trails projects, or a specific example is the Highline Park in Manhattan, which is this super cool park that is on a former raised subway line and it's just cutting through Manhattan. Anyways, there's a lot of possibilities with this one, so I'd encourage you to keep it in mind. Another important design principle in bonsai is the apex, and an important part of that is the triangular shape. This is most applicable in cities, I think in forming density gradients, and particularly in downtowns. Having a hugely dense downtown that immediately drops off into a single family neighborhood will look a little bit strange. So think about that triangular shape when you're building out your downtown, that you need to consider the space around your downtown as well, and how that looks compared to it. You might also consider negative space in the sense that you might have two peaks in your downtown, where the space between them actually forms an inverted triangle from certain vantage points. The same could be applied to something like a large hill right next to your downtown. Think about how it plays with the skyline view. Of course, there's a lot that can be said about bonsai design principles and aesthetics, and I'm sure I've barely covered the surface, but there is one more point on aesthetics that I want to mention, since I think about it all the time when I'm building, and that is natural flow. This one's a little bit hard to describe, but I think it boils down to you just have to let certain elements of the city build themselves. For example, if there's a large hill outside of your city, build your highway around it, or let it guide the shape of your street network around that hill. It's a great opportunity to give your city some visual interest, especially if you're a person like me who likes to use grids. You have to let the natural elements of the terrain and the water features in the map guide your design throughout the city. This in particular is why I like building on maps with a lot of elevation. So with those principles in mind, we can start thinking about the techniques used in bonsai and what sort of analogies we can draw to city skylines. The first one I want to talk about is repotting. This is relatively straightforward and isn't the most applicable one, but I think of it in two ways. So firstly, the goal of repotting a bonsai is to allow for more room for the bonsai's root system to grow. So the simplest analogy would be expanding the borders of your city. Doing this allows for your road system to expand and accommodate for more built environment. The second, and I think a little bit less obvious way to think about it, is that you might consider expanding your services such as healthcare and education, which I think can also achieve that same goal. The expanded services allow for your city to accommodate more citizens, much in the same way an expanded route system allows for more branches. In this case, the services are the invisible elements that allow for the more visible elements of your city to grow. A combination of these two modes of expansion, border expansion and infrastructural expansion, are probably the best way to think of this technique. The next technique is wiring, and the goal of wiring in bonsai is to guide the direction of natural growth in order to achieve an overall aesthetic goal. This typically comes in the form of wiring a branch in a specific direction. In city skylines, this technique can be applied to your transportation network. The placement and direction of your roads and railways have great influence over the development and overall look of your city. Another thing to keep in mind here is that when you're wiring a bonsai, you must take care to not snap the branches. I think in the same way, it's important that your transportation infrastructure adhere to the natural elements of the map. That relates back to what I was talking about with natural flow. Of course, this includes respecting the topography, but you might also consider preserving existing natural areas like forests. In combining these first two techniques, I believe a city has a solid foundation from which to grow in a natural way. This is how I spend most of my time building without putting too much thought into everything being perfect and complete the first time around. However, inevitably, this leads to some messiness in the city, which only will get worse and less manageable over time. So that's where the third technique and the reason for this episode comes into play, which is pruning. In bonsai, pruning is used in a few ways, though I'm sure there's a lot of ways that I don't even know, but one of them is to cut back smaller branches in order to allow for new growth or potentially to allow for a more healthy tree. Another is for general beautification, or maybe you simply just want to cut back some of the bonsai in order to have better visibility into the natural structure of the tree so you can make more informed design choices. I would generally say that this episode falls under the beautification category, but there are plenty of ways that I can prune the city to improve its overall health, such as balancing transportation routes, balancing the budget, or optimizing services. Another thing I've learned from watching bonsai channels on YouTube, and of course there's a lot that I've learned from it, but it is that an important piece to bonsai is to have the confidence to make a decision, because some of those decisions you make are permanent. You cannot get bogged down in that, you have to have the confidence to make the decisions. I think about this a lot when I'm building in city skylines because in real life, certain design choices in a city may as well be permanent. In game, it feels like we have a lot of flexibility, of course we do, but I try to emulate that permanence in my cities rather than allow myself to give in to the omnipotence that the game provides you. Anyways, I felt it was important to introduce this overall concept before I just went and called it a pruning episode, so let's get into it. So I want to start with what I think is going to be an easy win, but as I came over here, I noticed there's a tornado going over here. And then I also noticed that my population is declining really rapidly. And I know that this has to do something with the new update, but I'm not exactly sure why it's doing that. A lot of people seem to be moving away, maybe. Our death rate is not particularly high. It looks like our birth rate's about as high as our death rate. So it's not like we should be having a negative influx of people, it seems. And the unemployment's not too crazy either. And maybe this is something to do with the homeless population. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going to ignore that for now. You can actually see we have 0 homeless, so I'm not really sure what's causing that. Again, I'm going to ignore it. And I'm going to get to the first easy win, which is the power lines. And this is something that I actually noticed when I was driving on Highway 101, is that the power lines, especially the big transmission lines, they don't necessarily follow the road. So I guess in real life, they don't need the road access, which kind of seems a little bit counterintuitive to me, but I suppose there's a way to get people to the transmission lines should anything go wrong. I mean, they built them in the first place, right? So yeah, I basically just want to fix all of that kind of spaghetti that's going on and just kind of send it a little bit more directly into town. And I think overall, this will make some of our freeways look a little bit better too. Okay, and moment of truth, it does look like things are fine. And also weirdly, wow, okay, I spoke way too soon. I was gonna say weirdly, our population seems fine now, but somehow, somewhere, I really borked things up. So let me see if I can't figure that out. All the way in the back here. So that was a bit of a mistake, to say the least. All right, so now we should be good to go. There we go. And it's probably debatable whether or not that really improves things, but if we take a look here, This is kind of what I was going for. There used to be power lines just kind of like all over this particular area, but it's a little bit cleaned up right here. You can see they're off over to the side here, but they're not really obstructing any of the views. As you come in here, you don't really see these power lines. So that was what I was going for, trying to optimize for just the view as you're coming into the city there. And the next one is right here in Mariner's Rest, and I noticed that there is no pedestrian access nor car access at the mansion over here. I'm not really sure exactly what caused that, but it does need to be fixed. This is one that kind of seems like it feels like it should be easy, but I really don't think it's going to be because I added in all these custom surfaces. So I'm going to see what happens when I start moving things around. Hopefully we maintain most of the landscaping. I do think we're going to have to change up the houses here. Another solution might be to just increase the size of the roundabout. So I'll probably try that first actually. And I can't remember if these are actually roundabouts or cul-de-sacs. So maybe that's just a matter of changing these into a cul-de-sac and maybe that'll help. Okay, and the change into a large cul-de-sac did not help. I think it probably just really needs to be moved closer, which is hopefully not going to mess everything up. I'll give it a go, and I think we're just going to have to redo some of the houses here. I guess I'll leave the large roundabout because it should give us bigger lots. Yeah, it looks like it gives us an extra lot. So I'll keep the large roundabout in here and see if I can't move things around. And I probably should have saved before I did that because we lost a pool here, but I actually think we probably maintained most of it. So I'll go ahead and replace that pool, and then I will just redo the surfaces. And I think we should be fine from there. And I'll also replace those homes. Yeah, it definitely wasn't easy, but I'm happy with the result. You can see that these new homes are building in, but there's, I don't know, a little bit of a potential issue here with this flyover freeway being right here. That's something I mentioned in the last episode. This is an area that may end up redeveloping. I think if I ever do that, I want to keep this as kind of a historical landmark, but that's not a today thing. So I'll continue on to the next thing, which is actually close by, and it's going to be right over here. This waterfront area is something that I think is going to change in the long term, and that's kind of why I left it empty, because I figured if the Bridges and Piers DLC comes out, then I'm going to want to probably redo this area anyways. But I don't really know how long it's actually going to take for that to come out, and this is as good a time as any to actually take on the detailing of this area. So I'm going to do that. I think it also gives me some reason in the future to develop further down the coastline. For now though, I probably won't do anything too crazy, likely just some paths and trees. my goal here was to better integrate the Embarcadero and the buildings on it into the coastline here, and then give some recreational opportunities. I didn't want to spend too much time here. Like I said, I think there might be an opportunity in the future to change things up again. One of the things I do want to point out is I added in some of these new parks that came with, I think, the 10-year anniversary. There was a patch that added these new parks in. So there's one, which I didn't even realize is actually like a lemon or something, or an orange. And then I think there's another one that I added in. Yeah, over here. This is another one of the anniversary parks. I assume activity playground. But yeah, it looks nice. It's colorful. I think it fits in with the kind of coastal vibe. And then right here along the coast, I just added in a bunch of these boulders. It's not something that I think looks perfect. I mean, obviously I'd like there to be some more density in the boulders, and then I just added in some rocks to kind of fill in the spaces and a few bushes here and there. Definitely not perfect. I also added in the surface just to give it a little bit of a like visual difference. You can kind of see over here, this like grass texture is maybe not perfect. So I didn't really like that too much. All in all, I think it accomplishes kind of what I was going for, which was at least to have something here. Nice little walkway. I don't know that anyone's, oh, I guess this person's using it, but yeah, it's something that might not actually be used that often, because I don't really think it's like a quicker route than just using the street. And I think that's probably how Sims will make that decision. I don't know if like the leisure aspect is taken into account. Let's actually look where this guy's going. St. Chirp's Mortuary. Sorry, bud. Where is that? Well, that's a pretty that's a pretty far away. So I don't know exactly why he's using that particular path. Don't know why he's walking, but I don't know. Yeah, so we won't see too much activity here, I think, but in the future, maybe with more buildings here and maybe even activating the coastline more with other stuff, we could potentially see some more action here. I think it's a place that's probably going to redevelop in the long term. So I hadn't planned on doing anything here, but I did notice that right here we've got a lot of traffic coming off of the freeway and then into town. I think there's really only one thing I might be able to do to fix this a little bit, and what that's going to be is I am going to add an extra lane and then make a slip lane that goes from this direction over onto this street. Okay, I got a little bit freaked out by the tornado there, but things are actually looking, I think, pretty good here. We got a little bit of wonkiness, just in terms of like textures. I'm okay with that. I tend not to worry too much about those things. There's not a whole lot I feel like I can do about that. But I think this intersection looks pretty good for what it is. I extended out that 3 lanes up until here because I think probably what's happening is we get a lot of freight traffic that just wants to turn right here anyways. And then I think the other thing I want to do is I want to make sure I don't have stoplights here. That doesn't really make any sense. So I've had this empty lot right here that's kind of just been sitting here for quite a while. So I think what I want to do is I want to put some parking here because I think there's not really enough space for a full home and it would kind of just look a little bit weird. So I think what I can do is I can put one of the actual parks in there and then I can just kind of detail it out with a path. And yeah, nothing too complicated there, but I think it looks a lot better in the end. And the thing I wanted to point out here is that I used the hillside playground right here, which I think is pretty cool. And I wanted to use it here specifically just because we have this hill right here. So I feel like it kind of fits in with the general aesthetic of the surrounding area. The next change I want to do should be a pretty simple one. We'll have to go all the way over here to our train depot, our rail yard. The thing I want to change here is something that I kind of didn't really think about the first time around. So what I initially did is I made this a 4-lane road right here with the idea that we might see some heavy, like freight traffic coming down here. But I kind of realized that this is just a rail yard. So it's not like we'll be seeing some big, semi trucks coming through here. It's mostly just gonna be people who work at the rail yard who are just driving their cars there. And as we can see, there's really not much traffic along this road. So I'm just going to change that to be a regular road. And I think it ends up making a bit more sense in this area anyways. Next one is a small one, and we can see it right here, what's going on. You can see that train kind of dip down right there. I just want to fix that particular segment of track. I didn't even know it was there, but I was just kind of zooming around when I was looking at things earlier and noticed it. So I want to fix that and make it a little bit less of a roller coaster ride. There we go. That's straightened up. I think it looks a lot better now. It's just a very minor thing, but in the long run, like I've said this before, but I think just making these small changes will have a compounding effect and make everything look a little bit nicer towards the end of the build. This next one is something that I've left for a really long time, and I really shouldn't have. It's going to be this commercial area in Japantown. I left it initially because the commercial demand got really messed up at a certain point in the build, and I just didn't have enough demand to even fill this out, and I didn't want it to fill out with just anything. So I've got the demand now. I think what I want is really just the Japanese, let me see if I can find it, low density commercial. I don't think I want any high density right there just yet, at least. This should be just a fairly easy fix. I think this will just do exactly what I want it to do. You can see we even get the nice corners right here. We'll see what it looks like when it fills out. The other thing I want to do is just fill this area in right here, probably just with some trees. I don't think it needs to be that complicated. And that's about all I really wanted. I didn't want to have anything too complicated here. I always just wanted to have some Japanese low density, so I'm glad it's in there now. The other thing I'm looking at is like, I honestly don't know why this huge parking lot is here. I think it can just go. Like, there's no reason to have that thing. I'll just fill it out with some Japanese low density housing. And I think actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this open because I have a plan for potentially bringing this street through right here. So I'm going to leave that lot open right there. And I think this area is probably good. I don't know that I really want to have any sort of like building right here. May just add in a tree or two, but I want to have this space be kept pretty open just for this park. I have pretty much neglected this particular area of Baiemont for a very long time. I meant for it to be kind of like the crown jewel of the area, this big pedestrian area with, nice landscaping and shops and parks and everything right next to the bus station. But I kind of just never got around to actually detailing it. So this is probably going to be one of the bigger projects that I'll take on today. But I pretty much want to get this whole, anything that's touching this pedestrian area, basically, I want to get it detailed out and filled in. And I really wanted to place down this basketball center, which I guess is one of the new assets from the anniversary patch. But I'm getting this weird stuff, and I'm going to do this anyways. I'm just going to place it down. But I just wanted to note that, like, a lot of buildings are going to be destroyed in this process, basically. I'm not exactly sure why that is happening. That you see all those yellowed out buildings, they're for sure going to be destroyed. And I'll place it down just to kind of just show you that. Yeah, like that building's destroyed. It's going to rebuild, and I don't exactly know what the problem is. It looks like this one wants car access. Oh, it's just on that one side. So let me reposition it. But yeah, in the process of doing this, I'm for sure going to be destroying more of our nice homes over here. that's the extent of what I want to do here. I stopped short just right over here next to the road on this side because I kind of think that there might be some sort of building here in the future. There could be a better use of this space that I'm not thinking of right now. So I left it open for now just because it's on that road. And then first, what I did is I placed this basketball center, which is another cool asset that I think is just coming out with the anniversary stuff. I think these parking stalls are kind of on the wrong side. I wish they were on this side facing that way, but that's okay. I think it still looks fine. I just extended the surfaces a little bit here, placed a tree, and then this little food truck right here. I think that makes a lot of sense placing that right there. Then if we look over here, I just kind of tried to extend out these particular storefronts. You see this a lot in, I mean, pretty much any sort of downtown area, but I think a lot in Europe, you have these like extended storefronts where like restaurants will serve people outside, kind of extend the footprint of their business, since a lot of the stores here are not that big, so they don't have a lot of interior space. Then we go over this way. I placed down just a simple fountain here. I didn't want to go too complicated on the detailing right here, just kind of some trees and bushes, nothing too crazy. I think what does a lot of the heavy lifting here are the assets. This is another one of the new ones. It's like Chirper Park or something. Chirper Fun Time Complex. So it's a huge asset, huge park asset. And I don't know, I think it fits the general vibe that I'm going for of this area. If we look in here, whoop, we get this like downtown kind of terminating in this key piece right here, which is, you know, like a little fun time complex, whatever that particularly means. But it's got all sorts of things in here for kiddos to use. And there's even like a petting zoo, which is really cool with what almost, oh, I thought that was a bear. It's a pig. That would have been wild if it was a bear. Also just like cows in here, which I don't know if I would particularly want a child petting a cow, but maybe that's fine. I don't know. They're pretty docile animals, I guess. And as we continue this way, another one of the new assets, which I think is, I don't know, it looks pretty cool. It's just like this circular restaurant, I guess. It's a cafe. Limsa Bar is what it's called. But I feel like that's just like the perfect thing to be sitting out here, because if we kind of turn around over on this side, you can see this beautiful view out here. So that is like, I don't know, I couldn't have thought of a better asset to put there. And it doesn't really obstruct too much of the view from over on this side. It's a pretty low asset. It's not too tall. And this is something that I knew that I wanted to place right when I built this area, but it's a skate park. Something kind of like, I don't know, like you might see on Venice Beach or something, where they have the huge skate culture there. I could see a similar skate culture happening right here, because you've got the view, and then you've kind of got this like, I don't know, maybe a little bit more like, I mean, this area is not grungy, but this sort of denser downtown area might be like a little bit more grungy. Might be well suited for skate culture. I don't really know much about skate culture, but I think it's pretty cool. And then we're kind of back to where it started. This was the only part that I had detailed before. Oh yeah, there's one more thing that I'm actually really excited about. This is probably my favorite thing that I made, but it's a little community garden, and it just uses, I don't know, very simple assets. It's got good color. I really like these gates. I don't know, I just like how those kind of sit there. They don't really make sense if you think about it, but as long as you're not thinking about it too hard, kind of sticking with the immersion, I think it's really cool. And then yeah, another one of these new Chirper Playgrounds, Triplet Park, which I think is a fun name. But yeah, I tried to make use of kind of all the spaces in here, and everything kind of connects back up to our bus terminal here on this side. So I think, I mean, we can even check that now. I think we'll have kind of an absurd amount of, man, I always have trouble finding this stuff. Yeah, I think our buses might have kind of a crazy amount of people on them. And this is, I'm assuming this is the route we're looking at here. Kind of zoom out. Is it this one? That's 5. 5 is coming in here? Just 5? Oh, it's 4 and 5. 5, I don't really know where. Oh, that's just the circulator route is my guess. But yeah, then 4 is probably the one that's coming this way. Yeah. So CMTA 4 is getting, you know, as much use as I would expect it to be getting. So kind of furthering the case for extending a tram out here, which I'm pretty excited about. Looks like we got some traffic here, and our parking woes in this area continue. But yeah, like I said, I don't want to get too carried away with those kinds of things. I actually don't know if I said that, but it stands true. I don't want to get too carried away with parking right now. The other thing, and probably the last thing I want to do, is take like a zoomed out look at this map, particularly around our city. There's not really any, forested areas. That's something I wanted to do, and something you see in San Francisco is if you look at the hilltops, they're always like tons of trees on them, assuming they're not built out, but most of the hilltops have trees on them. Like that's a great example right there. Like in real life, you might even see that kind of looking exactly that way. And it actually, it might even be an oak forest in real life, this particular hill. No, that would be kind of cool. I'm assuming there's oaks over here. Yeah, like there's these two oak forests in San Francisco. One's like in Golden Gate Park, which might be right around here, and the other's on one of these hills. Anyways, I'm getting super carried away. I just want to kind of replicate some of that in some of these other areas. And I ended up just kind of sticking to these two areas right here. I actually had to buy one tile just so it wouldn't look too crazy. I didn't want to go too much further than that, just because I think a lot of these areas will actually end up developing in some way. So I don't want to just add in a bunch of trees for no reason. I think this area in particular might be a little while before I develop that. I've got this stuff over here that I have to take care of, and then possibly some more going on in Founders Landing. The other thing, and this probably is the last thing I'll do today. Oh, a crash. And I just had a crash, but no worries, I will soldier on. I was just saying that the last place I want to take a look at is Foundry Point, and the reason for that is I kind of just left it as is because it's an industrial park. I don't particularly care too much about how it looks, but I do want to just tidy a few things up. The first one, it's kind of hard to see, but this road is gonna like fall into the water. I don't really want it to look that way, so I'm just gonna quickly delete that one. So that was one, and I think the same thing applies right here. And then I'll just go around and check these other ones. It looks like this one as well. And then just because I'm kind of shortening these roads up a little bit, I'll do it here too. So things are just tightened up a little bit around there. I don't know that there's a whole lot more that I wanted to do right here. Just wanted to make sure those roads made a little bit more sense. Yeah, I think, yeah, like I said, it's an industrial area, so it doesn't require too much effort. I'm gonna end things here because I think I could just do this all day and, just keep chipping away at it. But I want to make sure that I'm kind of leaving the bigger projects for full episodes. So that would include like this area of Baker over here. This is going to be a whole new neighborhood. I'm going to dedicate an episode, or at least part of an episode, to building that out. And I think probably the next episode will include kind of tying up all the loose ends on this side of the highway where our train station is, and then where all these farms are. I basically want to develop the land that has been bought out in order to put in the train station. So that's going to include this neighborhood right here, and then kind of the other side of the track here up until these farms. I also want to replace some of the farms that I got rid of. That's something I haven't been doing. And then on the other side over here in Harlem Heights, this is just an area that I really need to finish up, because I've got this hospital just kind of sitting over here by itself. There's a lot of space here to put things down. Another thing I need is just a few more, well, not just a few, a lot more elementary schools, because we're a little bit low there. But yeah, like I said, that's going to be a dedicated episode. I don't want to extend this one more than it needs to be. What I was really aiming to do in this episode was improve the overall aesthetics of the build and complete the detailing in areas where I had just kind of left things as they were. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the results. I think this is probably something I'll do again, but it's going to be, every, say, 5 to 10, probably closer to 10 episodes, where I'll go through and tidy things up here and there, because I think if I let things go too long, then it's going to become more and more unmanageable. So Yeah, every once in a while, I'll do one of these episodes and I'll play around a little bit with the format. This is the only one that was going to include that, more like philosophical discussion at the beginning. But if that's something that you enjoyed, then I can also include that in future episodes as well. But that is going to do it for this one, and I will see you in the next one.